welcome to Writing Geeky Non-Fiction. You are apparently the blessed few that will receive our wisdom today that is the key to unlocking your future monetarily remunerative careers in the field of writing geeky nonfiction. I am Ben Riggs. I'm the author of Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons & Dragons. Hopefully I will also soon be the author of a sequel volume entitled Total Party Kill, The Battle for the Soul of Dungeons & Dragons in the 21st Century. Fingers and toes crossed on that one. I am your moderator today. If you're interested in my book, it is at booth 458 in the main hall, the Imagining Games booth. Are we loud enough?
Let's pull the mic from the center.
Are we loud enough now?
Yeah.
Come on up.
They'll shut the door.
Come on up. Good to see you.
Hi. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
There was like 73 million people in the hallway all having a convocation in the walkway, and I was like,
That's okay. I apologize in advance because I even said I'm going to start mercilessly on time, so I apologize for that. We're getting it. I'm Ben.
I'm Mikki.
We're getting as far as intros.
Yeah.
So, do you need a second to discombobulate or recombobulate?
No, I'm fine.
You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mikki Kendall. I write a lot of stuff. I sometimes wreck shop in sci-fi. You've seen me on the internet making trouble as Carnegie.
Nice. And Sandra or Sandra?
Sandra Taylor.
Sandra.
So I am Sandra Taylor, and I'm going to go ahead and mic because the mouse doesn't help. Sandra Taylor, I'm a writer of nonfiction, fiction, blog posts, all kinds of things. My current project in process is Structuring Life to Support Creativity. Just ran a backer kit for it, and it funded, so I'll be putting this book out in the next 6 months. Really happy to get to talk about nonfiction because I love it.
Hi, I'm Daniel Myers. I'm a database programmer, writer, and food historian. Other than short stories and a couple of fantasy cookbooks, I also run medievalcookery.com and have done transcriptions of 15 and translations of 15th and 16th century English and French cookbooks.
I know a question I'm going to ask you later. Okay. Cookbook translations.
Hey y'all, I'm Annye, or Maker Fishmeal. I'm a cosplayer and now an author. I have a 3-book deal for cosplay/crafting books with C&T Publishing. And I also have Finish Your Cosplay coming out early next year.
All right. So, let us begin in the beginning. How many of you think of yourselves as fiction writers first? Anybody? Okay, a few people. Raise your hand if you're like, no, I do think of myself as a nonfiction writer. Wonderful, welcome. I kind of want to lay out some publishing statistics for you right now, because the field of geeky, nerdy nonfiction is really exploding. If you have a nerdy, geeky interest, the world and publishing wants to hear from you. There were, according to Wizards of the Coast, about 2.2 million D&D players in 1999. They think there were 10 million in 2022. As a result of that exponential growth, there is just a huge hunger for stories about D&D and about the tabletop role-playing game industry in general. Last year, the D&D cookbook sold 200,000 copies. My book has sold out of its hardcover print run. It's into its paperback print run. And again, I think I'm going to get a sequel out of this, and it's doing really, really well. And while I think my book is good, I think the key to its success has been that there's not a lot of books like it in the market. There's not a lot of competitive titles. I had a guy tell me yesterday he's read my book 7 times, which is very flattering and very cool. But again, I think it speaks to the dearth of geeky nonfiction that is out there. So if you have a passion, if you have an interest that you see other people engaging in, and you want to write nonfiction about it, I am here to say, go forth, do that. Publishing and agents want to hear from you. With that kind of intro, I have some questions. I'm going to act as moderator here. I'm going to start by going around and asking people the following question. So how do you generate ideas for your work? Mikki, do you want to go first?
Sure. let's do that. I'm gonna make the microphone pop, so I'll take this off. So a couple things. I'm a New York Times bestseller for a book called Hood Feminism. I wrote another book called Amazon's Abolitionists and Activists, which is a graphic non-fiction history of women's fight for their rights. Ideas are not a thing that I struggle to generate. If anything, I am the person that someone will say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. And they're like, oh, you could do blah, 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 blah. My problem is figuring out how to focus all of my disparate interests into one place, right? And because I am someone who I'm on the unicorn train, right? I got a big book deal with a big 4 imprint. I'm a Penguin author. I'm in the midst of working on my next book. I can say with some authority, you can believe me or not, if you pitch it correctly, they will buy it. In my case, Amazon's, which has won several awards. It is my state's book of the year last year, all of this stuff. I wanted to do graphic nonfiction history because there are very few graphic nonfiction books about anything. And guess what? People are more inclined to read a book if it's pretty. People are more inclined to reread a book if it's pretty, right? This is an all ages argument, right? My book gets banned occasionally in schools, but they ban the wrong one. They ban Hood Feminism, which is not for kids, and they buy the one for kids, which has the same content. So whatever your thing is, think about also including graphic imagery. Schools will buy it, adults will buy it. Everyone will be so excited for this nerdy way to understand things, because the thing we do and fail to understand is if you have a niche interest, you tend to talk as though you're talking to other people with the exact same level of knowledge as you in your book. Lots of people learn differently, and they would be way happier if you gave them different options to learn about your thing than dense blocks of text. That was my soapbox. Sorry.
Sandra. Hey, Sandra.
Yeah. Good soapbox. I approve of this box. But also, going back to the question was, how do I generate my ideas? They accumulate. They accumulate in notebooks. They accumulate until there are so many of them that they have to clump up together. And then the organization's the hard part. It's like the accumulation of ideas isn't the hard part. It's like what gets to go in this book and what belongs in a different book. Does this book want to be all of everything and go, this deep on all of everything? Or do I want to pick this segment and go way deep on one thing? And I think there's a lot of power in the deep on one thing, and there's a different power in the survey course. It is just a matter of knowing which direction you're going. Are you doing a survey course, or are you doing a 401 deep dive? So that was my thought.
Doc, no.
Save the tag. About 16 years ago, my daughter was diagnosed with ADHD. And after going down the list of her symptoms, I realized, coming up with ideas for projects is not a problem. The fact, I normally, when I introduce myself, I say I'm a writer, a database programmer, writer, and food historian, because that's the order of income. And unfortunately, the food historian is at the very bottom, and the writer's not far above that. So I have to spend most of my time programming. Nobody wants books of my programming. So my problem is finding enough time to do the list of, I think it's now up to about 70 or 80 different works and volumes. The neat thing, when she was talking about the breadth versus depth, the deeper the dive you're taking, the less competition there is. And where this really comes in, I was panicking about 10 years ago as I was scrambling to finish a translation of a 13th century French cookbook into modern English, thinking if I didn't hurry up and get it done, somebody else would get it to market first. And then finally I realized, nobody nobody else is doing this. So,
Yeah, well, and the other thing is when you're thinking about, breadth versus depth, what else, where does this book you're writing fit in an overall career that you're trying to create? One of the things that I was thinking about when I was writing my book is I'm going survey. I'm kind of touching on a lot of topics somewhat lightly, but that's because I love coming to events like this, and then I'll take a chapter and turn it into a deep dive presentation. And so this all becomes of a piece and then there will be potentially further books that do the deep dives. Or the teenage version, you have Hood Feminism and the other book that is specifically for kids. And so you're taking a different angle of the same information to reach into a different audience. So these are further thoughts.
All of my books came from personal pain points that I saw in other books. That I thought that other people, either I knew that other people would want because I had a couple social media guides that kind of went mini viral, and it's like, oh well, there's a market, there are the people that want that. But yeah, they were all my own things that I had to learn in order to become a better cosplayer that I now see everyone else going through the same exact process that I did.
Yeah.
All right, I would say that for me, it's about finding a story. After my first book came out, there was about 18 months where I was kind of plugging away and working on things, but even at the time, I was like, I don't know what my story is. I don't know what I'm telling. I don't know where this is going, and I don't know where it's coming from. I'm just going to keep interviewing D&D designers and more and more and more. And then in December of 2023, Wizards of the Coast fired dozens of people from the D&D team, some of whom had been there for 20 years, and they just beat a path to my door. And they told me this shocking story of how essentially they built the most successful version of D&D ever, and their reward for it was to be betrayed, fired, and retired. And I'm like, that's a story. Here we go. And I jump off the deep end into that. So for me, it's about finding the story and then just chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. Talk to everybody, read everything, and make that your competitive advantage. My next question would be about process and how you went about writing your books. And should we just go down the line again? Is that okay? All right, so I'm going to pass it to Mikki.
Don't do what I did. We're going to start there. I sold 2 books in the same year. I sold 2 books, and those books came out in November of 2019 and February of 2020. I sold them both in 2017. Some of you right now are looking at me and going, hey, dummy. The window on that. And here's the thing, you're right. The window on that. My process looks deranged. I'm not going to tell you that my process is followable for everybody. I think you have to have a peculiar combination of ADHD and insomnia, right? And you have to be willing to just abandon all hope, ye who enter here, of things making sense outside of your brain. My lovely husband is sitting here, and at one point in the process, he would just come in and just airdrop food and drink in front of me, right? I was not choosing what I ate or drank or anything ridiculous like that. He was just it's been 6 hours of food. I ate it, I have no idea, right? But one of the reasons I was able to do it that way is that the research, to some degree, for both books overlapped. It was not exactly the same. They're not in the same book in 2 different formats, but they are very heavily related. And in general, in my process, I recognize that I am not capable of hyperfixating in only one direction. So instead, I hyperfixate in a couple directions and try to make sure that those directions will work together. With a side of, if you are me, writing non-fiction snippets, short stories, and other random detritus on the side when whatever you're actually supposed to be working on doesn't work. Procrastination station, it is me. But in that process, if you pull all your things together and then you work backward, for me anyway, carving it out as opposed to trying to build it perfectly from the beginning, I basically vomit all the words and then cut out the ones that don't work. rearrange and reassess. It's like sculpting. That works best when you have a lot of information you're trying to condense, in my opinion.
Sandra.
There's multiple ways the process works. I mean, one of the things is this notebook. This is the notebook that goes with me everywhere. It has everything in it. It has snippets of poetry, it has grocery lists, it has my daily to-do calendar, it has my emotional vomit about the particular day that's happening. It's an all-in-one notebook, and I'm allowed to be messy and sloppy in it. And so I have this here so that I can catch when an idea hits. I'm like, oh, this should go into the chapter on care work. And so I will write that note down so that I'm catching the ideas as they happen, because that teaches my brain that ideas are important and we should have more of them. And so I'm catching them so they don't get away. I also sometimes catch notes in my phone if my notebook is, for whatever reason, not handy. And I collect these things, and then they go into a Scrivener file, which is organized by chapters. And I start, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be the chapter on your goals and your priorities and how you arrange those. And as I'm writing that chapter, as I'm struggling to find and make sense of everything that's in there, I'm like, oh wait, no, this section actually goes into the motivation chapter. So I need to shove that down into the motivation chapter. And when I get to the motivation chapter, I realize, oh wait, no, it actually belongs in this other, so like this piece of information has bounced from my notebook into the Scrivener file and through 3 chapters until I realize it doesn't go in the book at all. But, this organization and shoving around, this is, and it comes out of the book and it doesn't get thrown away, it goes into the bits and pieces file. Because 3 months from now, I'm going to realize, oh wait, no, that actually goes in the conclusion, and then I will grab it back. And so it is this process of carving bits off and putting pieces back on, and then carefully, like potters do, smoothing it out so that it doesn't look like it's been added. And
little transition putty.
yeah, exactly. And so it is this process of building and forming and then letting it sit and coming back and realizing, oh no, that was a stupid way to do this. This whole chapter's upside down. Flip it, start over. So it's messy. I think it's just messy.
Doc.
The process for writing prose is a bit different from the process of translating or transcribing medieval texts. For the medieval texts, I set the ADHD meds aside, go ahead and hyper-focus, and you just go front to back and work. For prose, though, I was asked quite a while back by Jean Raby to write an article for the SIFLA journal on food and fiction. And to make the case for including food in your short stories or novels. And there, with that sort of thing, you have to, at least for me, I definitely have to do the opposite. I have to definitely take my ADHD meds, get all the distractions out of the way, so that I can think about the whole idea and get the narrative I want to write in first. And then it starts going back to, I hate to say it, high school English that I absolutely hated. But where you've got your 5-paragraph expository theme, and as much as I detested that thing at the time, it has really served me since then. For a lot of the nonfiction articles I have written, it's you state what you're going to state, then you give multiple paragraphs supporting it, and then state what you stated. Beyond that, that's about all the tips I can find for you. Oh, and don't throw out anything.
For me, the whole, the pitch process lends itself to my writing process. If you don't know, when you pitched nonfiction generally, this is all generally, it's not written yet, your book is not written yet, but you have an outline, usually an entire table of contents. And as a planner, having a table of contents is like having a to-do list. Right, and I can just go through and check them off as I finish them. Did this, did this, did this, did this. So even if you aren't going for for like a traditional publishing route. If you are a planner, as opposed to pantser, or in terms of like, you know, planning in your journal, then I definitely recommend for nonfiction getting your table of contents. Even if you know it's going to change later, get your table of contents, at least a skeleton of it done first.
I say my book's self-published, and yes, absolutely, because that was the set of instructions for me to follow. And
Yeah.
yes, I've completely changed names and shuffled it around, but
You're not committing to anything.
I'm not committed.
Yeah.
I can change it still. Right up until I send it to the printer, I can change it. But having marks to aim for is super helpful.
And my editor and publisher, like, they're up for changes too. Like, it's not, if you realize when you're writing something that actually this doesn't go here in the table of contents, or I need to change this chapter name, or completely add a chapter, like, you're not, the commitment isn't there. It's just, it's for you.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is when you're drafting a pitch, and this is me talking to myself, I'm working on something right now, and I hate everything about it, but that's normal. I know I sound muffled in this. One of the other things to keep in mind is that, especially if you want it to be a successful pitch, you're going to have to prove you have an audience, right? So including your social media platform, any article links about the topic, right? Like structuring that pitch. You've got your cover page when you're pitching it to whoever. You've got between 50 and 75-ish pages of words, right? Between intro, a couple sample chapters. But also, if you tell publishers who they can sell it to in advance, they are more inclined to buy it, because I don't know how to tell you this except to say it. Publishing is lazy. They don't want to do the work of figuring out who will buy it. They want to do the work of figuring out how they can sell it, maybe. And so, you know, when you're working with your agent, I'm a big fan of working with a good agent. You should be able to craft a way to show them other people are talking about this. There is a market for it, whatever numbers they can pull together. And I am a big fan, and I tell this to everybody anytime I do one of these, get on social media and start talking about the thing that interests you. Whether it is on TikTok or, well, not on Twitter now because that's a mess, but do it on Blue Sky, do it anywhere, Instagram. And the reason I say that is because one of the things I'm seeing happen, especially on TikTok, is people are getting book deals. Yeah. There is a girl who got she's got a best-selling, New York Times bestseller out of this. Her book is about being the grumpy villain's assistant, right? I have no idea if that book is any good. I have not read it yet, but I have seen 1,000,001 clips of people stitching her videos. She sold a book that I'm not sure she had really written until after she sold it. I don't think she knew where she was going, right? I'm not, like I said, I'm seeing a couple people going, the book is not good. I believe you. I have no problem believing you. I just want to say that the marketing piece of this, if you're going to write geeky nonfiction, market yourself in front to your publisher and your agent. And if your agent is not on board, get a different agent, okay? Because I'm hearing some stories of people, well, my agent said this would sell. I went through 2 agents before I got my agent. Trust me, you will find the right agent and then you will find the right house. Do not do the thing where you try to write what they tell you the market wants, because that ship has already sailed.
They would be angry that I'm saying this, but Brady and James from Jabberwocky, which is into geeky nonfiction and genre fiction in general, are here, and they are good people to grab by the lapels and talk to about this.
Do not actually grab them.
Yeah. Metaphor, thank you. Really good word.
And don't follow into the bathroom with your manuscript.
No. Yeah, one of the reasons that my book is self-published is because when I talked to my agent friend, who's very smart on this, they told me you have to have a platform in order to, you have to have some demonstrated expertise, which is what Mikki's talking about here. You have to get out there, you need to start talking about the thing so that when you say, I'm an expert in this topic, they believe you, and they're ready to buy the book, whether you're talking directly to consumers or whether you're talking to an agent or a publisher. And I knew that I had enough people who would believe in me, like from author friends. I've been in this industry for a very long time. I've been, adjacent to a lot of people. And that demonstrated to be true, because when I said, oh, I'm writing this book, several people were like, oh yes, I want this book. But going to an agent or an editor or a publisher, well, why do you have the expertise? Well, I have no resume. This book is going to become my resume. This book is the demonstration of expertise that will then get me potentially pathways into other nonfiction books as well. And so getting out there, I've done it kind of a sideways way, but I'm just demonstrating the expertise by creating the thing.
So I demonstrated expertise in a different way.
Yeah.
And I would recommend, I get your point about the book.
Yes.
I did it through articles.
Yeah.
One of the things you can do is pitch various outlets, right? I've forgotten who's doing it now, the Exo Jane replacement of the moment, but the Lady Mags will publish almost anything. Teen Vogue is a place to pitch. I know someone's going to be like, I can't just pitch Teen Vogue. And I'm going to tell you that if you look at the blurbs on Hood Feminism and you see Gabrielle Union's name, her name is there because I just asked her in a DM. Okay? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so just take the shot anyway. The worst they can say is no. Don't just pitch to geeky outlets. Pitch to regular outlets. Like when you were talking about the D&D thing, if you had pitched The Guardian during that whole mess, you could have run for a good 3 months in mainstream press that was already trying to understand what's going on. Because one of the things that happens, for those of you who don't know my resume, I've been published in literally everything. I've been published in Time, I've been published in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, The Guardian, BBC, NBC, MSNBC, I've been all over the place, right? A lot of those are because I was like, hey, I can do that thing. I have an Association of Food Journalism Award because I pitched a piece to Eater magazine on a whim, right? So I am not telling you to do a thing I have not done. They can see you talking about what is happening in nerd space. They don't know what it is, but they would love it if somebody wrote them and explained it, right? They would absolutely love it if someone told them what this was about, because millions of people are talking about it. I know that some of you are going to be like, but I don't want to explain it, and that's fine, that's not your circus. But if you want to become seen as an expert, that is the easiest road, right? Because publishing doesn't care where you published it, but if it's a place publishing has heard of, they're more likely to see you as an expert.
Absolutely.
Let me briefly tell you an opposite story of utter failure in trying to get anything published in a journal or outlet for like the past 2 years. Again, I've seen geek journalism collapse, which actually I feel opens up some opportunities because the demand is still there, which means that if you want to go out and do it yourself and just put it in front of people, they will read it. Like I tried to sell an article on Gary Gygax, D&D co-founder Gary Gygax and sexism. I got shot down 5 times. Then I posted it on Reddit and got 3.5 million clicks. Like it's the most read thing I've ever written by far. And it got shot down everywhere. So I'm going to give the counter story of even if you do that and get shot down, don't be discouraged and just see if you can still go forth on your own. Because again, I feel like with my book, I'm like, I get paid by the book royalties, from the exposure.
Well, wait,
go ahead.
Where were you pitching?
I pitched to Polygon, IGN, Rascal, and Forbes.
Okay, that's why. So the place you should have pitched?
Where should I pitch?
Business Insider.
Business Insider. Okay.
Business Insider, Variety will take any form of celebrity gossip. I run the history of celebrity gossip, and that would technically count, even though they're going to say it doesn't. Entertainment Tonight. Weirdly, I know. The least likely places you would think of to pitch are also often the places that will take the story.
Hey, I'll give it a shot.
Right? I say The Guardian a lot because The Guardian picks up a lot of very interesting pitches. I'm going to say a name, everybody's going to give me a face, and I'm going to say it anyway. The reason we're hearing so much about Neil Gaiman now is not that people haven't been talking about this. It is that people finally started talking to non-industry places about this. When you exit the industry, right? When people have lots of relationships, a lot of times a story like the one you're describing that no one would touch because they didn't want to be in the midst of the mess, the other people don't care, right? Forbes, I get why you pitch Forbes. Forbes is weird in who they will pick up and who they won't pick up, and arguably Forbes requires you already be seen as an expert. Business Insider, though, does not. Business Insider is often really happy to know what the heck is going on, and that would have been a Business Insider story.
See, I'm just frustrated because I used to have a really funny running into Neil Gaiman in the bathroom story, and I can never tell it again and get a laugh. That story is sadly dead. Oh well. But I will totally try the list you just gave me for the next one.
I'd probably make a better story about him.
I mean, maybe, but
I
no longer be
especially
true.
if it involves a swirly in the toilet.
I mean, it took place at MIT, so no.
Just saying.
Okay, let me get back on track here. I never talked about my process. So I talk to everyone. So interviews and relationships are obviously really important for me. People are willing to talk to me. I also look at what has been published by Wizards of the Coast and other D&D outlets and try to be a master of all that material, which is really, really hard. I take all that and I write from it. And again, just chase the story, chase the story, chase the story, chase the story, down to the bottom. I feel like we actually kind of just segued into the next question, which was how do you get published? How do you break into the industry? Did Annye and Doc, do you want to say anything about that? Because you guys kind of
Oh yeah, we've been talking too much.
No. I mean, I just provided content to the community for free, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it did, give me cred.
Established expertise.
Yeah, it's established expertise and just worked really hard to become a good artist. Like if you want to write about art, if you want to teach people how to do art, then you have to be a good artist. So maybe I have a very niche story, I realize.
Mine might be even worse.
Okay, let's go.
About 20 years ago, I started going to GenCon, and I was sitting out there. And Gene Raby was running the panels for the Writers' Symposium.
Novelist Gene Raby?
Novelist Gene Raby, that Gene Raby. And I started out in the back of the rooms, and then I ended up moving up to the front of the rooms because I was, geek. I'm really getting into whatever they're talking about. I had some stories and such that I was working on, and I wanted to learn. And then talking to some of them, because I asked a lot of questions after the panels, they found out that, I research medieval cooking, and the writers, being what they were what they are, if they're going to write about something, they kind of like to know about it, so they would start asking me questions. And then I think it was the second year I was attending, and I think it was Paul Jeunesse, I'm not sure, was up on a panel, and they had somebody who was a no-show for the panel, and he said, well, Doc, come up here, you know this stuff, because I had established that I was an expert on this one little niche, and it kept growing from there. So I kept coming back and becoming a part of the fabric of this thing.
Maybe the answer is like know your niche or work on your niche, or I don't know. I don't want to necessarily encourage folks to niche down, but like we're all like a super geek about something, and maybe that's our something.
And be willing to share the information.
Yeah.
Own the niche.
Yeah.
Own your own and
Yeah.
like your own expertise. Be willing to say, you know what, I know how to say something about this, and be willing to actually say it, rather than being sitting and jittering, knowing that it's being told wrong, and like find your own way to. Like, don't take over a panel from the audience. That's rude, but that kind of thing.
I mean,
or do if it needs to be done.
so I'm gonna say this.
Say it.
Please.
If you go to things like WizCon or ReaderCon or any of that, you may have seen over the years some things happen. Some things get knocked over, and rebuilt. And I was one of the people that was part of that in a couple of cons, because if you like to stare at women below the eyes, if you have to say eyes up here too many times, or you like to put your hands where they don't belong on new young writers, I am probably your worst nightmare. I'm definitely gonna wreck shop in your life. It's my favorite thing. Don't be afraid. To speak up about the things you know, but also, honestly, to say something when something is wrong, whether it is about the niche topic or the behavior. Because a lot of times, why things sort of get so siloed is everybody gets nervous about the asshole in the room, right? I bully bullies. Full disclosure, if you ask anybody, I am a stone cold bitch. They are not lying to you. You should probably ask them why they think that. You probably should. They had it coming. But the reason I say it that way is because a lot of what happens in this industry is the same people get the same things over and over again, and it's like an old boys club, except it's not even old boys at this point, right? It's like 6 dudes in a room that all know each other in certain parts of the industry. And a lot of what is happening is that because no one is saying hate, so that's not even right, and it's boring, and it's old-fashioned, and it's not relevant, we get stuck in a loop, right? We saw big chunks of the industry start to founder, especially during COVID, right? Comics really went through it, right? We're still seeing comics kind of recover because for some inexplicable reason, they decided to only count book sales in comic book stores and none by women, right? That's how we got all those reports that the industry was foundering. You gotta be willing, as part of getting that deal, to accept that people are going to perceive your work and they're also going to perceive you. A lot of people in geeky spaces tend to be shyer, quieter. You'd like your work to be seen. I said a real stupid thing once about how I wanted my work to be famous, but I didn't want to be famous. Everybody that was present that was already published laughed in my face. They loved me, but they were like, oh baby, that's not how that works. You have to be willing to be perceived. You have to be willing to be the asshole in the room sometimes, or to be the loudmouth, or to be whatever people are going to call you. Because I hate to tell you this, but it's really, really true. The most minute things will make people unhappy. My most controversial tweet in history, and I talk about race and police brutality and class and a bunch of other topics, right? I said Batman wasn't very much of a hero. I had Batman fanboys in their damn feelings for 6 months. They still occasionally resurface. And I laugh and I let them do it, right? Because A, they're pushing up my numbers, but B, it's honestly hilarious how invested they are in the fact that I don't like their faith. And if you want to argue with me about Batman, we can argue about it, but I promise I read a bunch of it, I can argue you down. The reality is that we are in an industry where the loudest voices get heard, right? So if you want to be published, whether we are talking about Dungeons and Dragons, or we are talking about another tabletop RPG, or we are talking about articles, whatever, you're going to have to be your own megaphone. Because that's how publishing can see you. And that's going to be uncomfortable with some of you. I'm just saying. I really would like to see more faces in the spaces than the same old faces. Okay?
Amen.
Yeah.
Where are we? We got 10 minutes left. Anybody else want to say anything? Should we say take questions? Let's take questions.
Don't be shy. I will run down in the audience with a microphone.
Sir.
Hey, so I come from a journalism background, and I'm used to, like, when I ask for like an interview, you have like this outlet in front of you where it's like, oh, there's a connection right there. How do you bridge that gap when you're working on something and trying to establish yourself as an expert with interviews, but you don't have like that outlet behind you that kind of gives you that opening credibility?
My short answer would be, if you just say, I have a podcast or a blog, you'd be surprised how many doors will still open.
Or a book deal.
Or a book deal, yeah. Thank you. That's my short answer. Anybody want to add to that?
You can also just say, I'm a freelancer, I'm looking to pitch this to, insert 3 outlets, or an outlet, right? A lot of people will respond if they know where you're sending it, or you intend to send it. Even if you haven't, you can tell them up front, be honest, I haven't sold it yet. I'm putting this together and I'm pitching it to here, and my backup 2 places are here and here. People will respond, they will answer. I interview people all the time, and I am an independent freelancer. who will then be like, oh, okay, now I can say books. But even before books, they're like, oh, okay, at least I know that you're a real person trying to do work and not a crackpot.
I'll add to that. You need to have some place where they can find something resembling credentials. I have a bachelor's in anthropology, a master's in computer science. My dad is a laser physicist, my mom is a naturalist. Nowhere in there is medieval European history. But I have a website where I've collected recipes just because it was my interest. Medieval European cooking. So now, when I went to, just this spring, to the Kalamazoo International Medieval Congress, I'm talking to European history professors and grad students and researchers as an equal, because after a while, people have seen my website and know who I am. People in that field. But that wouldn't work without the website. No matter how much research I'd done, they'd like, who the heck are you? So you need at least something as an anchor. It doesn't have to be a lot, just as long as there's enough of a presence.
Thank you.
Sir.
The pitching process is kind of where I struggle with. Getting interviews is great. Topics, easy. Selling it, that's the challenge. Do you have any advice in terms of actually getting a response on some pitch letters and whatnot? Because compared to fiction, you at least get the dignity of a rejection letter. You can send 1,000 pitches out and hear back about 2 of them. Is that normal?
You're talking book or article?
Articles.
Do you want to?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, full disclosure, I pitch like an asshole. I say it that way because there are people who will send a pitch and wait 48 hours. I do not do that. I pitch whenever I'm pitching first thing. I usually email. I build relationship with editors on social media first. It is easier because editors are getting inundated with pictures if you talk to them where they are. They're on Threads. There's a ton of them on Threads now. They're on Blue Sky. You can still occasionally see some people on Twitter, right? Interact with the stuff that they post, talk to them. They'll remember your name. It doesn't have to be a daily or regular interaction, but you just start to get to know people in the industry by interacting with the kind of stuff that you're interested in publishing in, right? Full disclosure. Then, I respond to calls for pitches first. A lot of editors will post looking for someone who can write 800 words on X topic, right? If it's a pitch I'm interested in, I go ahead and pitch. My pitch email for articles is fairly straightforward. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I saw your call on such and such. I have written for, this is an important thing, if you have written for anywhere ever, it does not matter where, written at all for anyone else. I've written for this, this, and this. I would love to write about insert topic. Here is my angle, 800 words. Would that be of interest to you? I keep it polite, I keep it professional. It's like sending a business email. Now, the reason I say I pitch like an asshole, some people then wait 24 to 48 hours for a response. For a while there, I was making my living entirely from freelancing. I don't do that anymore, but if I need to go back, I will. I'm thinking about it right now. Just because of this conversation. I would pitch in the morning. If I don't hear from you by that afternoon, I copy paste that pitch and I pitch it somewhere else. Right? I don't sit on a story. Most of these things, the churn and burn is a few hours. If there's ever a week where you see my name, and some weeks are like this, or at least it used to be, you would see me in Time, The Guardian, Bustle, somewhere else, 3 or 4 places in the same week, right? You might feel like, Jesus Christ, she's everywhere. What happens is, I write very fast. I pitch as I'm writing the things I want to write, and over time, you get a rhythm. Now, is this the easiest and most comfortable approach? No. You're going to hear no a lot, right? But because you are pitching, even if you are failing in your pitches, they will see your name over and over again. And you have a routine, at least I did, of the places I wanted to pitch to that week. Eventually, you're going to get a yes, right? I wrote my first comic book because I brought Gail Simone cupcakes, but also because when Gail said, would you like to do this thing, I said yes, right? So I am telling you now, my path is one where you just accept you might hear no. And then you do it anyway. And you keep doing it. Because what happens often is a lot of people think, I heard no, I cannot do this. You can do it, you just have to keep doing it. Build a relationship, right?
I'd like to add on that. Heck with the microphone. You can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What she just said, there's a lot of parallels, because I haven't pitched a lot of nonfiction, but I pitched short stories, or I've submitted short stories. And in that market and in the novel market, the key is avoiding the slush pile. Unsolicited submissions go in a big stack, whether it's digital or real, and are given to junior editors to read through and winnow through, and maybe they'll show up somewhere, but odds are 90% of the time they're going in the trash. It's just the way it is. But if it's an editor who knows your name, that you've conversed with on social media, interacted with, that's an in. That's a possibility, because you can say, can I send this to you? And then that's going to the editor instead of going to the slush pile where the junior editors are going to see it. Anytime you can avoid getting into that stack, you're going to use social. If you get to know an editor or anybody in the publishing industry well enough that they come and ask you then for something on that topic, you've just skipped the entire process.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So
yes, ma'am.
You do not want to get in that slush pile unless you really don't care too much. And if you've got an article already written and you don't know a good market for it, go ahead and submit it. It could happen. But you still have the article afterwards if they say no.
Right, and the thing about it is essentially the same slush pile. Every outlet has an email they tell you can email to. I've never used that email. Right?
That's my
See,
mistake. Then.
yeah.
I have never used that
And
email.
that tells you right there, she's skipping right past all of that.
Yes. So, in the skipping past, I'm going to tell you one more. This is a secret, not a secret, right? Editors go to all the same stuff you do. Editors go to a lot of the same events. They're nerds, right? People who love words hang out in all the same places. They go to ReaderCon, they go to WizCon, they go to GenCon, they go to Comic-Con, all of that. A lot of times, if you say, I am going to be at such and such, I would love to grab coffee with you, buy you coffee, whatever. There are editors who will be like, sure, go to their panels. Do the thing where you're kind of toward the front, talking to them, talk to them afterwards. Because generally speaking, even though this is all gonna sound like much vaunted horseshit, they're just people.
Yep.
They're just regular people. They
Be
put their pants
nice
on.
to them
Yes.
and be polite.
Also, don't be weird. Please God,
And do
don't
not
be weird.
follow them to the bathroom with your manuscript.
Yes.
I know that's funny. I know someone that happened to.
I am going to tell you that I had someone while I was in the hot tub try to pitch me their book idea at WizCon in the hot tub. And I was like, I cannot think of a less appropriate time to do this. That might be the winner. But we were pretty close,
That's
right?
awkward, yeah.
But after panels, offering coffee, mingling in the hallway, all of that, that's how you get to know people. And I'm not saying network just to befriend editors, but you'd be amazed how many people are editors and you don't realize it. You'd be amazed how many people work in publishing at these events and you just don't know it because you're not talking to them as people.
And you're not trying to sell them right then and there.
Right.
What you're trying to sell them on is that you are a nice person that they could work with, that knows the topic, and can give you, that you can give them a story.
And let me also say,
What kind of-
once you have gotten in, do the work.
Yes.
Right? Whatever you said you were going to send them, send them, right? And again, you're gonna get edited, you're gonna hear no's, you're gonna hear this doesn't work for us after all. Feel your feelings quietly to yourself and do it again. Because what tends to happen is you start to learn the rhythm of that publication. No two publications have the same internal Bible, right? And you start to learn whether or not you want to work with that editor. This is a two-way interview. There is an editor that used to be at Ebony who I would never work with again. Not because we could not theoretically work together, but because of the way she acted with other people, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you cut up like this with people when you can get away with it. You don't cut up like this with me because you can't get away with it anymore, but I don't like the way you move. but give yourself permission to try and fail and try again.
Mikki, where can people find your work?
Oh God, I am available wherever books are sold and on the internet as Carnythia, wherever you see Karnythia. If you just put this name in the internet, it'll tell you.
Sandra, where can people find your work?
Online, sandratayler.com. Make sure there's an E in Tayler. Or you can just come grab a flyer up here in the front and get a book now.
Doc, where can people find your work?
dmmyers.com or medievalcookery.com and on Amazon.
Annye, where can people find your work?
I'm on the internet as Maker Fishmeal, and you can come get a bookmark if you would like.
My book is at booth 458. I have a podcast if you're interested. Thank you all very much for coming.